Hello there, folks. UFL Jim here with the UFL show with UFL Jim Recap Edition. Today we're talking week 1 of the UFL. We're breaking it down game by game. We're going over the storylines. I'm giving you some characters. We're going to have a very nice little flow going on. And I didn't do a recap show last year, so I'm giving you all the goods this time. I want to just capture exactly the vibes of all the UFL space every single week. It's all about me.
It's the UFL show with UFL Jim, your one-stop shop for all things United Football League. We have a sexual
Cheers to you.
tension. We have
Not
the
the show.
heat. We have the power. We have the news. It's all here on the UFL show with UFL Jim.
So who am I, you ask, I ask for you? Well, I am UFL Jim, the Jim of the United Football League. You may have seen me around time to time, and you may ask, what about XFL Jim? And I ask you, which one? 2020 XFL Jim, who is now morphed into Rampage Jim, or 2023 XFL Jim, who we still see from time to time and who will be appearing on this show very frequently, along with USFL Jim. After all, they are my beloved conferences. We'll also get Wizard Jim, Investigator Jim, and even Chef Jim on to give their takes on, a week-by-week basis of the United Football League. You'll see plenty of fun people around. We'll have amazing guests. That's what this show is about. Game number 1, we had the St. Louis Battlehawks taking on the Houston Roughnecks, with the Battlehawks winning 31-6. And I was fooled, I'll be honest, hand up. I was one of the very foolish people that decided to get cheeky and think, hey, maybe the Battlehawks are going to be a little out of sorts after losing the rock of a quarterback that was A.J. McCarron. Maybe the Houston Roughnecks under C.J. Johnson, for the first time in recorded history, won't embarrass themselves. And I was wrong on both fronts. May Wilkins looked great manning the Battlehawks, and the entire organization of the Houston Roughnecks should be disbanded, should be burnt to the ground, should be labeled as a terrorist organization as long as they are under C.J. Johnson's reign. He does not know what he's doing. He looks like a buffoon out there, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The entirety of that opener was frankly embarrassing for the city of Houston. Barely anyone shows up, and that's on the league. I'm not going to blame the full city or the fans for that. That's on the league too. But St. Louis comes in, they take their battle dick and just ram it down your throat for 4 damn quarters. They couldn't do anything wrong. They were running all over the place. And Hakeem Butler didn't even get any play. It was Ja'Cour Pearson. It was the running back. It was everything else besides, I don't know, man. St. Louis is just crazy. They have so many weapons. They're so locked and loaded. They looked so ready. But also you have to take that against the fact that Houston could not do anything. I expected so much more out of Anthony Brown. He looked he looked out of his depth. He looked slow, he looked worried, and I don't know if that's all on him or if that's on Johnson or what, but it was rough. It was so rough to watch, man. I don't know what the Roughnecks can even do as long as he's the head coach still. Also, Houston couldn't tackle. And that was a theme for a few teams this week, was that they just forgot how to tackle, apparently, which blows my mind that you have players that have been in these leagues for how long now, and you still can't tackle? I don't understand it. I just don't. The running game for St. Louis couldn't be stopped. Houston could do nothing. It was a score-at-will type of situation, and score-at-will the Battlehawks did. Game number 2, we had the Arlington Renegades facing off against the San Antonio Brahmas, with the Renegades winning 33-9. Yes, our first 2 games, our standalone games, the Friday night and Saturday games, were embarrassing. The Renegades just owned the Brahmas. And the Brahmas, similarly to the Roughnecks, didn't know how to tackle, which is not something you really expect out of a Wade Phillips coach team. I was very surprised with how the defense for the Brahmas in particularly looked. Kellen Mond wasn't awful, but they couldn't really get a run game going, and Arlington was just doing whatever they wanted on offense, running the ball like crazy, passing the ball like crazy. They couldn't do any. They were getting 2-point conversions all over the place, and the Renegades defense was getting the stops. I said in my season preview that the Renegades defense would be vastly improved, and that would get them on their way to potentially, and I'm still predicting, another spring league championship. They're going to win the UFL this season. There was a 100-yard discrepancy in offense. 100 yards. And I expect more out of a team that made the championship game last year. I understand they got embarrassed. I understand this isn't the same team, but like Lovett didn't do anything, McFarland didn't do anything, the Brahmas defense didn't do anything, and it was just not good to watch. Davion Smith had the most hilarious stat line I had ever seen in a game. 3 rushes for 3 yards and 3 touchdowns. They didn't even need him that much. That's how much this game was owned by the Arlington Renegades. They looked sharp. They looked crisp. Yeah, they had a pick, and maybe could have had more, but that doesn't matter because Luis Perez was slaying that thing like his rent was due. What a week for Perez. His book comes out. He wins a game in stylish fashion, and they're just going to, now they have another home. It's beautiful time to be Luis Perez right now. And it's a beautiful time to be an Arlington Renegade fan. It's not a beautiful time to be a San Antonio Brahma because they have a lot that they need to take a look at and clean up. Remember last year, though, they kind of started a little bit slow. They were in a lot of close games. They had to pick it back up at the end of the season. No one's out of it yet, and I trust a guy like Wade Phillips to kind of right the ship. But man, the fact that they didn't even know how to tackle is a tough look. Moving on to Sunday, we have our third game of the opening week. We had the Michigan Panthers taking down the Memphis Showboats. Panthers won it 26-12. The score's a little bit deceiving just because the Panthers had a last-second pick 6 on a Memphis Showboats desperation drive. Honestly, the Panthers were kind of in trouble for the latter half of this game. I felt like the Showboats were kind of mounting a comeback, mostly due to the fact that Mike Nolan and the Michigan Panthers were hard stuck on doing the 2-quarterback system. They should have just gone with Bryce Perkins the entire time, forcing in a guy like Danny Etling, who is fine, but not at the level of Bryce Perkins. We saw so many times the athleticism of Perkins make things happen that wouldn't have happened with Etling in there. He was hurdling guys. He was doing incredible. He was breaking tackles like crazy. He was looking hot out there. And yes, that is partially what got him hurt last year, but it's also what he brings to the table and what you need a guy like him to do. I don't understand. Memphis was doing it too. I don't understand these UFL teams that are doing 2-quarterback systems this way. But if you're still trying to figure out who you have, you should just play one for a full game, play another for a full game. I understand it's a 10-week season, but it still blows my mind. The Panthers defense is legitimate. It always has been, always will be. That's the one thing on this roster that you don't have to worry about. Their defense was great. Memphis's defense actually not too bad. And I think that the Showboats have a path to maybe still do something here, especially with the way the Stallions looked this week with having holes and whatnot. Nothing is off the table. And I don't know who they go with at quarterback. Both had their moments. Both looked a little rough at points. But I still come away being a little bit more hopeful for a Memphis Showboats team than, say, like a Houston Roughnecks team. But Michigan, you know who your guy is. Just start him, and you're going to be fine for the whole season. That's my main takeaway for the Panthers. Just roll with Perkins. You know what you got. You know what you're going to get. Otherwise, I don't know what we're even trying here with this whole Danny Etling thing. And game number 4, we had the DC Defenders taking down the Birmingham Stallions 18-11. And, oh boy, the Stallions fall. Mr. USFL MVP himself, Alex Magoo, both won and lost them the game somehow. He got murdered out there, first of all. The offensive line really lost him the game. 8 sacks for the DC defenders against this Birmingham offensive front, which is embarrassing for a team that should be as stacked as the Stallions are. 0 passing game, especially in the second half, but 0 passing game for the Stallions. Magoo could do nothing. He had 0 time. The only way they had anything going was honestly Alex Magoo and his legs. So it was hard to criticize him fully for not generating enough on offense when he was also the only thing working on offense, if you know what I mean. For the DC defenders, Jordan Ta'amu looked great out there. Big issue on having passes deflected at the line. You don't like to see that. But what do I say? It's an odd season. It's an odd year season. Jordan Ta'amu is going to be great. 2022 in the USFL, meh. 2023 in the XFL, Offensive Player of the Year. 2024, meh. And now he's looking fantastic. The defenders could do so much on offense. I mean, Birmingham was still good on defense. The defenders were punting a decent amount. Whenever it felt like they needed to, the defenders could always get a clutch play. Man, Dr. Heat dialed up that defense against Birmingham and just owned their ass. Things are looking good in DC. Things are looking real good in DC. I think Birmingham probably bounces back. Maybe see Matt Corral next week. But I think things are looking real nice in Washington, D.C. Also, I don't think we've seen Birmingham this out of sorts ever. Like, look at this drive chart right here. This is basically going in before halftime. This is after their touchdown. Punt, end of half. Punt, interception, punt, end of game. You can't do that and expect to win any game, let alone against a team as fired up and playing as well as the DC defenders. And then after the game, there was a little how do you do between some of the players and between the two coaches. There's a little bit of drama going on there. That's what makes this league so dang great. Okay, so now there's a couple overarching things that I am taking away from week 1. Number 1, how in trouble are the 0-1 teams? I think you can kind of rank them like, I don't think the Birmingham Stallions are in that much trouble. I think they can either go with a guy like Matt Corral, who we know to be good, or Alex Magoo will figure it out and they'll be fine. They'll still be one of the top teams in the league. They just have so much raw talent there and the coaching is there that it's hard to knock them out. Memphis Showboats, I have faith. They showed a little bit of promise against a team that we think is good, but also that was partially Michigan letting them hang around by doing this whole 2-quarterback system that just wasn't ever going to work. San Antonio, the defense leaves me a little troubled, but I think they figure that part out eventually. It all comes down to, can Kellen Mond kind of figure the league out and have a really good offensive game? They have some weapons. He has dudes he can sling it to, but we need to see a great offensive game out of the Brahmas. Like just one for me to really get behind him. And then the Roughnecks, I have 0 faith at this point. Anthony Brown, even if he had potential, that could be squandered at this point. And as long as CJ Johnson's the head coach, 0 faith whatsoever for them to get this done. Next storyline. How does CJ Johnson tie his shoes in the morning? Next, ESPN trying to do a little too much. You saw a very different broadcast between Fox and ESPN. And trust me, I love that ESPN is trying different things. I love that they're kind of going for the betting stuff. But I think there is a way they can do it where it doesn't feel like they're ramming it down your throat. They can introduce it quarter by quarter, kind of introduce how the props are going, how the over's looking, how certain things are going in the game, what's the spread, what's the live total, what's the live spread. I think if you do it quarter by quarter, it's way better than like breaking in to the like live broadcast and just flooding it while the game is still going on. If that makes sense. Either that or you can just add something on the ticker and you don't have to have broadcasters who aren't well versed with gambling. And then the camera angles. We don't need the sky cam so damn much. It's one of the worst ways to. If you're going to do different camera angles, I understand it. If you're going to want to do the player cam more often, I understand it. But you don't need to be. You can be a little bit smoother with it. And then also, I loved it in the DC game when we got to hear Skip Holtz and Alex Magoo communicate back and forth for basically a whole drive. That was super nice. That was it was a nice atmospheric, let the game audio happen and let us experience that. That was awesome. In Memphis, it got a little bit messy between the announcers and the coach and things going on. They just need to coordinate things a little bit better because I like what they're doing. I like the little gimmicky stuff, quote unquote, that they're doing, but they could be cleaning it up a little bit. Other things that I'm interested to see, what quarterbacks emerge. We had a couple quarterbacks share time in week 1. I wonder if anyone's going to sort of cement themselves as top of the pack. Tomu looked great. Perez looked great. Honestly, a lot of the veterans of spring football looked really good. Perkins looked great. But the new guys, a little bit iffy. So I'm wondering, who can we see, what tiers sort of create themselves in the UFL for the quarterbacks. And last but not least, not great crowds. DC was fine. DC was decent. But still, it's less than we saw for everybody last year. And I wonder if that trend continues. Is that all anyone's going to be talking about? It doesn't matter. The TV product we know is the number one thing that matters. But at some point, crowd size and the way that the UFL kind of embraces the markets has to matter, right? This is a huge off-season thing we talk about, but it's going to be bleeding into the in-season when we see crowds of 4,000 people, 6,000 people, sub 10,000 person crowds. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt to watch, and it's going to hurt to talk about, but it's going to be important to talk about. Now, we move on to my winners of the week and losers of the week in week 1. For the winners, I have Dr. Heat, Luis Perez, Manny Wilkins, and Bryce Perkins. They should be for obvious reasons. Dr. Heat dialed up an incredible blitz-heavy defense, shook the Stallions to their core. Luis Perez slanging that thing all over the field, looking fantastic, looking very clean, not compared, way better than what they looked last year. Manny Wilkins, everyone was talking to A.J. McCarron. Everyone was saying, what can the Battlehawks do now that he's gone? And we just don't know. Well, guess what? They can sling that thing, and the boy can run. Bryce Perkins, just athletic as hell, doing things that just make me cream. It was awesome to watch. For my losers, I have Alex Magoo, Wade Phillips, the entirety of Houston, and Danny Etling. For Alex Magoo, this was about as rough of a start as he could want coming back into spring football. He had all the hype in the world. Everyone was on his side, and then he puts out a stinker like this. He could run the ball really well, but he still has some adjusting to do from him. Maybe it's all we can expect out of a wide receiver transitioning into the quarterback role. Wade Phillips, the defense needs to be better if Wade Phillips is the coach. It just has to. You can't have guys tackling this poorly when Wade Phillips is your guy. It's just, you can't happen. You can't have it happen. The entirety of Houston, the coaching staff, the players, the fans, the city itself, embarrassing. Just flat out embarrassing. And then Danny Etling, because it was so obvious how much better the Michigan Panthers offense looked with Bryce Perkins at the helm versus Danny Etling. And that'll bring us into our Week 1 UFL Power Rankings, brought to you by My Will to Live, that has been exponentially increased by the UFL starting back up. At number 8 is the Houston Roughnecks. This organization has gone from the top of the top in 2020 to the bottom of the bottom in 2025. It's just how it happens. We don't know why, we don't know how, but this is how it happens. At number 7 is the Memphis Showboats. Listen, you show some promise, but you still looked pretty rough, and really the only reason that game was close is because Michigan was doing a whole 2-quarterback thing. And that's from someone who says that the score is a little bit misleading. At number 6, the San Antonio Brahmas. Learn to tackle, and I'll get back to you. At number 5 is the Birmingham Stallions. Listen, this is as low as they've ever been as a franchise. This is the first time, I think, in modern history that the Birmingham Stallions have a losing record. So this is just where they're at right now. At number 4, it's the Michigan Panthers. Listen, if they would have had Bryce Perkins starting the whole game, probably be a little bit higher. But as it is, this is how it is. Number 3, DC Defenders. I have you this low because they also looked a little shaky at points. Tomu throwing in some balls that were a little bit, hit or miss, and he got blocked a lot. But still really, really good. At number 2, it's the St. Louis Battlehawks. Ran all over them, did whatever they wanted, but it was against the Houston Roughnecks, who I feel at this point is a failed organization and just a failure of they stink. They stink. And at number 1, it is the Arlington Renegades. Did what they wanted to against the Brahmas, who I still have as a pretty darn good team. just maybe not figuring things out week one. These power rankings can change drastically week to week. This league can be volatile, and I, for one, hope it is. I hope this is a sign that the playoffs won't be wrapped up in week 8 like they were last year. Now, a quick few things I'd like to see in week 2 before I do my UFL show with UFL Jim week 2 preview. Do we see crowd sizes improve? Obviously, the average will improve just because you add to these, like, you keep DC, you add St. Louis, everything's going to go up. But do we see Arlington continue with around 10,000, maybe even a little more? Does St. Louis crack the 30K mark? How does Michigan look? DC, can we bump it up just a little bit? That's things I'm looking forward to seeing. And then, who ends up 2-0? Who ends up 0-2? Does it happen? Does it happen? Are there any teams that, like, I'm excited to see, I'm excited to see it. Either way, week 1 has us feeling real nice. Week 2 is going to get me going. Like, week 1 kind of revs up my engines a little bit. Week 2 is when the motor starts to turn on, the gas is pumping, and I'm just coming in for like 9 straight weeks. It's just explosion after explosion. It's hot, it's heavy,